We are now going to start making our first key by using the 4 readers I showed earlier. As I demonstrate the Cobra reader, the Easy reader, and the Accu reader, I am only going to read 3 wafers on video, but hopefully you'll get the idea of how they work. I am not going to use video time to read all 6 wafers in the door lock. I will record the whole process for the Lishi 2-in-1 reader. Now, some of the basic facts about the 4-day cut lock system that we want to try to remember. That first off, the lock was introduced in 1996, and so if we get a call for any cars 1996 or later, we need to look and see if we are dealing with the 4-day cut system. The locks were manufactured by both Stratec and Hurd. I think Stratec made most of those locks. The locks do use opposing wafers, and the ignition lock may have a sidebar or it may not. They have 2 different ignition locks. The ignition lock has 7 wafers in positions 2 through 8. The doors have 6 wafers, and most all of them are in positions 1 through 6. There are a few models that put the door wafers in positions 2 through 7, primarily talking about the Lincoln LS, the Ford Explorer, and the Mercury Mountaineer. That's where you might find those in positions 2 through 7. The test key is an H75 key blank. Okay, these are the little HPC tools that will hold the dust cap back for you. You could make your own. It's just a little piece of metal with a little slot. It goes in there and it'll lock in there, like so. Then you can take your scope, and it, leaves you free to scope the lock. You can go in and rake the tumblers and count the tumblers on the top and then on the bottom. This is a little probe that is pretty handy also for, you can use it both for top and bottom if you want to probe the lock. And one thing that we need to do is make sure that we know which wafers are on top and which ones are on the bottom. We can't just assume that the top wafers are 2, 4, and 6. It could be reversed, and that's true for many locks. You really need to check every lock to make sure that you know which wafers are where. Now I want to find out which wafers are the deepest, the top wafers or the bottom wafers. Which ones go back into the lock the deepest. And one technique I've come up with is I'll take a key extractor and put a little masking tape on it. Go all the way in. I'm going to do the top wafers first. Go all the way in and come back and catch that top wafer and put a mark on my tape, and then I'll take that out. I'm going to go ahead and make the mark all the way around so we can see both sides. And now I'm going to do the bottom ones, and you can see that the mark is out about a 1/4 of an inch right there more. So the top wafers are the deepest wafers. So if this is wafers 1 through 6, 6 being the last wafer, that would have to be on the top. So we have confirmed that 2, 4, and 6 are on the top, and 1, 3, and 5 are on the bottom. Okay, we've already sprayed this electronic cleaner, which acts as a degreaser into the lock. It's the grease out of it and helps the tumblers to move a little bit better. We're also going to use a little bit of lubricant. It's designed for locks. This is called Lock Shot. Then we're going to take a key, and of course this is a H75 4-day cut lock, and we're going to put a key in there and just run it back and forth a little bit. Try to make sure that all of the tumblers are freed up and sliding very easily. Okay, now we're going to do the Cobra tool. And again, this tool has the slide captured in the tool, which is one convenience of this tool. It also has, as I showed earlier, it has a little light that lights up. If it's night, that can be helpful. Again, we're doing the bottom one, so we're going to slide the tool in, pull the slide back, come back and catch the number 5. Okay, so we put slight pressure inward on the tool, push the slide in, just so it touches the wafer, and then the scale's up in here. And this actually reads about a 1.5. So it probably is a 2, but we're going to go ahead and write down 1.5. So we're going to write down the number 5 as a 1.5. Then we push the slide in to release the tool. Get back a little bit, pull the key tool back a little bit, pull the wafer reader out, and capture the number 3 wafer. Again, putting pressure, a little bit of pressure inward, push the wafer reader in, just till it barely touches. And again, we're going to read right in here in this scale here. This is the number 3 wafer, reads a 3. So we push the slide in, release it, back the key up a little bit, pull the slide back out, and trap the number 1 wafer. Jiggle it around a little bit, put a little pressure in, push the scale reader in. The number 1 reads a 3. Okay, so that's the 1, 3, and 5. We can go ahead and push the slide reader in and take that tool out. Okay, so with the Cobra reader, we're now going to read the wafers on the top, which are 2, 4, and 6. Okay, so we're using the Easy Reader to measure these wafers. And remember, the 2, 4, and 6 wafers are on the top. 1, 3, and 5 are on the bottom. And now if you have a lock that is 2 through 7, this reader will also read the 2 through 7. But this lock is 1 through 6. So we have the slot facing up, we have the slide tool in place. If the slide tool is not in place, the slot is going to get held up on the wafers and it's not going to go all the way to the back. So make sure that the slide tool is covering that slot. Push the key all the way in, pull it back to catch the number 6 wafer. Jiggle the key around a little bit, and now we're going to read that wafer. Get your slide tool lined up, put a little bit of pressure inward towards the lock, and then very gently push the slide tool in. Once it touches the wafer, then we take our reading off of the scale right here, and we can see that this one reads a 3. Now, you push the slide tool in to release the wafer, pull the key back just a little bit, take your slide tool out, and continue to pull the key back until you catch the next wafer, which will be the number 4 wafer. Again, jiggle it around a little bit, put the slide tool back in, put a little bit of pressure inward on the key, and then very gently push the slide tool in until it touches the wafer. And then again, we will read our scale. This wafer also reads a 3. Push your slide tool in to release that wafer, bring the key back, catch your next wafer, which will be your number 2 wafer. Put the slide tool back in, we'll jiggle it around good. Put the slide tool back in, pressure inward, and then very gently again, push the slide tool in. On the scale, this time we can see we have a 4. The little mark on the slide reader lines up with the 4th mark on the scales, so this wafer reads as a 4. I want to point out in the instructions with this Easy Reader that it says that it will not work with Huff locks. It says most notably the Focus Escape and the Moss Attribute. And for those, they recommend a different easy reader called the Focus 7. So you really want to pay attention to if you're working on a Huff lock or not. You know, here's a drawing of the face of a lock as to what a Huff lock would look like. You can see that it has a different looking face for the keyway. So if you see one like this on a Ford 8 cut, that would be a Huff. The standard non-Huff looks like this. We're going to use the Accu reader tool now. And you remember with the Accu reader, there's two different keys, one for the deep wafers and one for the closer wafers. This key is for number 5 through 8, and we're going to be doing the bottom wafers, which are 1, 3, and 5. So we're going to use that one. Use the slider to put the key in, take the slider out, pull the key back until it catches the number 5 wafer. And I think you heard that probably even pop up in there. We're going to jiggle the key, make sure it's up in there good. And then we use the number 5 depth first to check and see if it's a number 5. We put the little slider into the slot on the key and push it in. Try to hold the key level and push the little reader tool in. And we can see if we look right here, we see it went to the second mark, which means no, it's not a 5. So we take the little 5 reader tool out. And next, we try our number 4 depth. See if the number 4 depth is a yes or a no. And again, if we look right here, we can see that number 4 went to the no mark. So it is not a number 4. So we have to take that out and we try our number 3 depth. Again, hold the key level. Push the little reader tool in. Says no. And the number 2 depth. There is no number 1 depth. If it's not a number 2, then we know it's a number 1. And that actually stopped on the yes mark. So we know that we should record this as a number 2 depth. So that's the number 5 wafer would be a number 2. Okay, we use our slide tool and take this key out, completely out. We get the key that's for reading wafers 1 through 4. Put the slide tool in to cover the slot, push the key in, take the slide tool out and bring it back, and that should catch on the number 3 wafer. They're numbered here on the bottom of the key, and the 3 is right even with the keyway. And so this should be correct in the number 3 wafer. Okay, so we have the number 5 reader. We push the number 5 reader in. It goes to the no, it says no. So then we get the number 4 reader. Number 4 is a no. Number 3. Three is a no. We use the number 2. Number 2 says yes. So for the number 3 spot, we record a number 2. Then we use our slide release and back the key up to the number 1 wafer. Do the same thing again, starting with number 5. No. And number 4. No. And number 3. Number 3 measures a no. And then we'll check number 2. Number 2 says yes. Stopped on the yes right here. So we record number 1 as a 2. Then we take our slide release tool and take that out. We're going to read the wafers on the top, wafers 2, 4, and 6. And we catch the number 6 wafer, jiggle it real good. Take your number 5 depth tool, slide it in and see if it says yes or no. It says no. Take your 4 depth tool, slide it in. It says no. And then take your number 3, slide it in. And it stops on a yes. So for the number 6 wafer, we would record a 3. Okay, this Lishi tool, again, it's got the 2 different parts that move in here, and we need to get them lined up so that they will go into the keyway and get it pushed up all the way in there good. And then we can pull these slide tools. These are actually the picks and the readers. We can pull those back. Now our first job is going to be to pick this lock open. And we know on the bottom we got 1, 3, and 5. On the top we have 2, 4, and 6 wafers. And we have the scale, which I showed earlier, that if we simply line up with the correct number, it should be on top of that wafer. So if I come down with this one like this, obviously the other end's going up. So this is going to be 1 or 2, 4, and 6. And this other one will be doing 1, 3, and 5. So I'm going to just start with this 1, 3, and 5. And just kind of feel for them. Now I'm going to put slight pressure, slight turning pressure, just like we're picking the lock, and let's see which ones are bound up now. Okay, we're going to do 2, 4, and 6. Okay, number 6 just picked. Number 4 just picked. Let's try the 1, 3, and 5. 5 is given no resistance really. 1, 3, and 5 are no resistance. Let's try 4 and 6 again. Okay, 1's a little tight there. Maybe 1 will pick, but let's try 3. Okay, 3 went. Let's try 1 again. Let's try the number 2. We have to continue to go back and check on all of them to make sure they didn't slip. 1 does not want to give way. I'm going to back the pressure off a little bit and see if it'll, I think it went then. 1, 3. Let's try 2, 4, and 6. There's 2. The only one I'm not sure about here is 5. I think the other ones have moved. But the lock hasn't released yet, so we know at least one of them is still holding. There we go. So now the lock is picked to an open position. So the next job will be to actually read the wafers, and we'll simply come with again our reader on the number 1 wafer position. We come up and it shows a 2. So in the first position, and these lines are very close together, that I would say that's a 2. Okay, we're going to get number 3. Number 3 shows a 2. In the number 5 position, Number 5 really shows a 1. Okay, then doing the ones on the top, we're going to do number 2. Number 2 shows a 4. Number 4 is a 3. And number 6 is a 3. So that's what we get from using the Lishi tool. These are the cuts that we measured with our 4 different readers. The cuts listed across the top: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we have the Cobra reader, the Easy reader, the Accu reader, and the Lishi. Now we can see there are some discrepancies. In cut number 1, we got 2 3s and 2 2s. Cut number 2 is all 4s, so we can be pretty sure that that's the right cut there. 3, we have a discrepancy with two number 3s and then 2 number 2s. Number 4, we got all 3s, so again we're pretty sure that's probably going to be correct. Number 5, we have 2 that we measured at 1.5. We got a number 2 and then we got a number 1. And if you recall, on the Lishi tool, I mentioned that I was having a hard time really feeling this cut, which really indicates to me that it very likely could be a number 1 cut. And then on number 6 cut, we have all 3s, so we can be pretty confident that we have a number 3 in the number 6 position. Now what I'm going to recommend that we do, let's cut a key that's a 2, because we have a discrepancy here. Let's go with the smallest cut. Then let's go with a 4. Here, again, we have a discrepancy. Let's cut a 2. Here we have a 3. On number 5, we're going to cut a 1. And number 6, we're going to cut a 3. And then we're going to try that key and see if it will work. So I'm going to go to the code machine and cut a key like that, and then we'll try it out. Okay, now this is the HPC 1200 code cutting machine, and I've shown this machine in other videos, and so I'm not going to go over it except just in basic explanation here. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this machine. But for people that may have not seen the other videos, this machine will cut keys by code. Okay, it has 2 handles, like an X and Y axis. One that sets the space, the correct space, and that would be this handle here. And the other cuts the depth, indicates the depth. We have cards that just slide in here, and this is the card for the 4 to 8 cut locks. This card number is CX101. Now you want to make sure you have the right cutter wheel on your machine, as well as of course the right card. We're going to cut the cuts 1, 3, and 5 on one side of the key blank, 2, 4, and 6 on the other. So the 1 was a 2, the 3 was a 2, and the 5 was a 1. So we're on the 1 here. We're going to cut a 2. We're going to go to 3, and we're going to cut a 2. Number 5 is no cut. This is the key that I just cut on the code machine. 1, 3, and 5 cuts are on one side, and I put a little mark on the handle on the bow to remind me which side was the number 1 cut side, because the number 1 cut was down, so we have to turn it down or it's not going to work. You'll notice I just made 3 cuts on each side. 1, 3, and 5 on one side. Now, number 5 was a 1 cut, which actually is no cut. So that's why there's no notch in the number 5 spot. And then on the other side, the 2, 4, and 6 cuts. And I do that so that if the key doesn't work, hopefully it's going to leave an impression mark in one of these locations, and it's going to be easier to identify the problem cut and correct it if we only have 3 on each side to start with. Once we have a working key, we'll put all 6 cuts on both sides of the key. Okay, so we're going to put the notch down, so that indicates the number 1 cut. The number 1 cut is down. Put the key in, and we can see that that key works good. Now, if there was a problem and it didn't turn the lock smoothly, it should leave an impression mark on one of the cuts, and we could identify which cut needed to go deeper. But this key is perfect. These are the cuts that we need to put now on both sides of the key. And then we'll need to work on getting cuts 7 and 8 for the ignition. So I'm going to go ahead and put the cuts on both sides of the key, and then I'll show you how we're going to complete the key. Okay, so here we can see the key with all 6 cuts on both sides of the key. And again, we'll check it in the door lock and make sure it's good, but I did that and the key works fine. So now we're going to get on to making the cuts number 7 and number 8 so this key will fit the ignition lock. I'm going to use my iPad, and we're going to go online to Black Hawk products. Now there's a number of companies that offer the kind of service I'm going to show you now, which is a fill program to fill missing cuts. This is the one I use, but like I say, there are other companies that do this. The website for Black Hawk products is blackhawk7.com. Go to their website, I choose online services, and they have several different services they offer. The one we're interested in right now would be Fill Online. So we're going to go to that. We're working with a Ford 8-cut lock. So we will choose right here, Ford 8-cut. Then it's going to ask for my username and password, and then we fill the code in here. The cuts that we know. We had 242, 313. Now there's 2 more cuts that we need to know about, so we're going to put in 2 question marks, and we're going to have this program make a chart for us with the possible cuts. All right, it came up with only 2 cuts. Oftentimes there's going to be more than this, but with this particular lock here, it says with the combination that we have, the 242, 313 cuts, there's only 2 possible cuts for the ignition. So the number 7 cut is going to be 1, the 8 cut 2, or it's going to be 4, 3. So we're going to progression the cut down, and by what I mean by progression is that we're going to cut this first cut, the 1, 2. The 4, 3 are deeper. So we're going to do the 1, 2. We're going to try that. If that doesn't work, then we're going to just cut the same key, the same 2 cuts down to a 4, 3, and see which one of the two keys will work. I did our first cuts, 1 and a 2, 1 and a 2. This is the ignition lock. Anyway, this doesn't work. This does not turn the ignition lock. So I'm going to have to cut this down, number 7 down to a 4, and number 8 down to a 3. So I'll go to the code machine and do that. So I'm back, and I made the 4 cut and then the 3 cut on the number 8 position on both sides of the key, and this should work because there were only 2 possibilities, and we can see that it works quite smoothly. Try your key on both sides to make sure both sides are accurate. So we made a key for the door locks and the ignition locks. Now, as we found out, the cuts that actually worked were these cuts 242, 313. The only reader that we used that was right on the money was the Lishi reader. The next most accurate reader was the Accu reader, and it had them all but one cut were right on. The other two cut readers were a little further off, and what we would normally do, again, is hopefully the car has more than one lock that you can read. And normally you are better off reading the passenger side door as opposed to the driver's side door. Now in this case, we used a driver's side door lock, and we used an older lock that I was pretty sure had quite a bit of wear to it, so that I could demonstrate the differences that you're going to find among these readers. But I have learned that with using the Cobra reader and the Easy reader, one thing that I'll do is I will push in as I'm taking my reading. I'll put a little pressure inward and do a reading, and then I'll pull out and do a little pressure outward and do a reading like that. And the same with the Easy reader, and just see what the differences are. Most of the manufacturers recommend that inward pressure will give a better reading, but I have found that it's worth looking to see what you get if you put outward pressure on the tumbler as you're reading it. The other thing that I have learned is that, especially if the locks are worn, the Cobra and the Easy readers in particular are more likely to read a little higher than they should, as they did in this case here. And what I would normally do, if the only reader I had was a Cobra reader, I would cut this key to one cut less. I'd go, obviously on the 5 I would cut it to a 1, but I would cut 2, 3, 2, 2, 1, 2. I would cut them one cut less, because if a lock is worn down, the tumblers will read deeper than they should. And if that didn't work, I would cut them to 2.5, 3.5, 2.5, 2.5, 1.5, 2.5, and see if that would work. And hopefully that would work, and I'd be able to get impression marks and then impression the key down from there. The same is true with the Easy reader. Also with the Accu reader, if I cut this with the Accu reader and it did not work, I would cut another key and I would cut them back a half a cut. 1.5, 3.5, 1.5, 2.5, 1.5, 2.5. And again, see if I could find impression marks and make the key that way. I tried these readers in the passenger side door, and the Accu reader came out right on. It was only off one cut on the driver's side door. And again, that could have been something that I did. Maybe I didn't hold the key exactly level or whatever. But the Accu reader measured all of the cuts correctly. These were the correct cuts here, 242, 313. Using the Cobra reader, remember the first time the Cobra reader was off on this cut and this cut, and then we had a 1.5 here. In the passenger side door, it did better. It got this one correct, this one's correct. This one here, it still measured off 1. The 1 came right on the 1, so that was better, but the 6 cut was off. And on the Easy reader, it was only off on the number 6. It was off by 1 here. And again, this could be something that I did by not holding the tool totally accurate, or it could be the wafer just didn't come up that time all the way into the gap to measure it. So my advice would be to get some of each of these, try them for yourself, keep some records as to how accurate they are for you, and then form your own opinion as to which ones that you like. But this will not work every time. It's probably successful in making maybe 80% of the keys. So what are you going to do if you cannot make the key from the readers? The next thing that we're going to use would be tryout keys. Please take just a moment to like the video and also subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.